Radiating from the heart of America and stretching from coast to coast and border to border, welcome to On Radio, the wireless industry's weekly download coming straight from the builders and newsmakers of everything wireless. Your host is Jim Tracy, and this is On Radio.
So here we are with week 3 of Ryan Tracy, one of the legends in growing up wireless. We get to talk for another week, man. Glad to have you back.
I appreciate the opportunity to be here and speak with you guys again.
You know, speaking of that, if I look back over my shoulder again, I see, and this is maybe '04, and you came in one day and you were like, you know what? Somebody's going to have to fix all this stuff that we're putting out. And this is the time this is before Tiger Team. This was before site optimization. It was called AOP, Area Outside Plant Engineering. And they were the folks who didn't climb, who didn't know what to do, who had to fix stuff. And you were like, hey, we can fix it. If we can build this stuff, we can fix it. Tell me what led to that, like, moment. What was that flashbulb moment where you were, hey, we need to keep working?
Well, I guess I liken it to when we first started building sites, there wasn't sites. I mean, not very many of them.
Yeah.
You know, I went to the party. They had what they called a handover party for a carrier.
Yeah.
And it was the first 2 towers that handed a phone call from one tower to the other. Yeah. Like, wow, this is awesome. It actually works in a real world scenario. I mean, now in your drive to work on your commute, it probably happens 30 times and nobody thinks anything one of it. But there was, 150 people there celebrating that this tower handed the phone call off. It was amazing.
Yeah. Without dropping it.
You know, if there's only 50 towers in your market, they don't break that often. And if they do, but then when you're building sites to the tune, at that point, it was just 6 coax lines, 6 single pole antennas, and most of them were monopoles and any inner city sites. It was I remember we were running a 2-man crew and our boss told us, hey, all I want from you is a site a week. I want 1 new site a week, and that's all I can ask of you guys. And so that was what we were shooting for, is building 1 monopole, finished, QC'd, tested, and down the road every week.
Yeah.
Well, when you start putting them in at that rate, we're 1 crew, and we're trying to do 50 a year. And so we started, there was 50 in the whole market, and then we built 50, but there was 10 other crews doing the same thing, or attempting to do the same thing. And I'm going to tell you right now that it got to a point where on every corner, and you can work on a cell site in a downtown location and look across the tops of the buildings, and you can see your 5 neighboring sites without a pair of binoculars.
Yeah.
And I think I was working, there was a huge push in those early 2000s to do infill coverage everywhere. And I think I was working on a site and I looked across and I could see like 3 other sites that were from the same carrier that I had already worked on. And I thought, man, we've had a couple calls on stuff breaking. This stuff doesn't last forever. And I thought, well, somebody's got to repair this stuff. And there's a huge market in the repair of it. It's a different skill set than building it.
It turned into optimization too, didn't it?
Oh yeah. Then it turns into optimization, and then they through endeavors within the R&D, they came out with electrical down tilt to try and make sure that they had even more optimization that they could make, and they could, they could do some of that optimization without requiring a tower climber, so that they could do it, and props to them for figuring it out, because generally you're not able to just call someone and get them to go do, hey, we got 10 sites that all need these, azimuths and tilts changed.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pretty grand thing to work jointly and then to build a relationship with the guys that are doing the RF designing. And, those guys have a skill set that we could really earn a lot from, because I learned early on that the value I provided to them was giving them information they couldn't see because their job doesn't put them in the location on the tower like it did me.
Yeah.
And so they would ask us to do azimuth changes or down tilt changes. And through that relationship, they started trusting me that I would call them and I would say, hey, on your map, it looks like you're going to cover that area. And I think you forgot there's a really big hill in the way, or there's
Yeah.
an air conditioner on the roof, and you just pointed this antenna right into an air conditioner. It's probably not going to do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
And those real life, that's another aspect of a relationship between people who have different skill sets, but yet are working really hard to understand the other person's viewpoint so that it does work in the real world.
Yeah, so I'm going to change up on you a little bit. I was listening to you one time do an interview, and you came up with a phrase that said, "I build men." I build. Tell me about that.
I think, I don't know where it came from, but I think in describing to somebody what I did, I had learned through however many years I had been in the industry that the thing that I truly loved wasn't the technology or the towers or the challenge of building a network, because that is never ending, and it's fun. It's fun to understand how those things work. But every day that I worked, I got to work with something more dynamic, more that I had more passion for, and that was the relationships and the people that we worked with. And I learned that climbing towers generally isn't an old man's deal, so that we ended up with a lot of young guys and that worked with us. And those young guys were looking for help, not only with their pocketbook, but with what they were going to do with their life, with who they were even. I mean, these were young guys that were willing to put it all out there for us. And I wanted to give back to them as much as possible. And so we ended up with lots and lots of conversations about life and the difficulties and strengths and everything that goes along with the industry, and traveling and everything that goes into what we did. And
A lot
then
of hours of windshield time.
a lot of hours of windshield time. And I learned that that's what I really loved about what I did, is the impact I had on their lives and who they were. So I decided, I also at some point in there, thought to myself, I am not going to be able to do this forever. The best thing that I can do is teach one person to be better than me. And then as soon as they're better than me and they can teach me something, then I'll just pick someone else and I'll do it again. And I'll do it as many times as I possibly can.
Yeah.
And there is no better feeling than when a guy or a person that you mentored comes to you and teaches you something about the industry that you're supposed to be the expert in. It's
Happens
the
to me all the
best.
time.
It is awesome. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And so I just learned that what I truly loved was building people, to be the people that God wanted them to be. And so I kind of coined the phrase and just thought, I'm gifted at building towers and sites, constructing and fixing networks. For some reason, my brain works in a way that I'm gifted in being able to do that and learning the new ways to do it. But I don't really do that. I got to the point where I didn't really do that anymore.
Yeah.
I just invested in the people, and I learned more through teaching them than I ever did through trying to learn it myself.
Yeah.
And so I said, I don't even build sites anymore. And people are looking at me like, why don't you build sites? And I'm like, no, I don't build sites. I build men, and
Yeah.
they build the
Awesome.
sites. So
Awesome. So, the reputation of wireless when we got in it, and even today, is that it's a bunch of transient knuckleheads running around. But there was a change that happened, and I'd like to think that part of that started in Eastern Washington. And you were saying, hey, let's drive more so we can spend more time at home. And let's work longer days so we can actually go home for the weekend. And tell us how you came to that.
I came to that through living it every day and having a family of my own, and learning that there's freedom in being able to make those choices was a gift, and being
Yeah.
able to try different things. One thing that I learned, for those who are strictly look at the world through a monetary value, the fun thing about this lesson is that it worked not only for my life, not only to make me happier, not only to make my family live a better life, but it worked monetarily. And there's often not a lot of things that work in all those aspects. Um, but I did the math, and approximately 70% of our work in the telecom industry is set up and takedown.
Yeah.
If you add in picking up the materials and pre-testing the antennas and driving everything to the site and setting up the load lines and setting up the rigging and everything else that it takes to be prepared to actually mount something on a tower, it's approximately 70% of our work is just set up
And
and
that's all
takedown.
MOB. That's all one form of MOB or another.
It's one
Before a
for
tower part touches a tower.
correct. I mean,
Wow.
essentially, we're really handy movers. We just move stuff to really hard to get to places. And so I thought about that, and I thought, okay, if you work a 10-hour day and 7 hours of that is set up and 3 hours of it's actually doing what we had to do, how much more effective are we if we put an extra 2 hours on there? Because the
Right.
extra 2 hours you just added to that day, you just added 2 hours of productive work because you didn't add any more setup and takedown. You didn't add
Yeah.
any more mob. You were already at the
Right.
site. Okay. If you add 6 hours on top of a 10-hour day, now at some point you get to a diminishing return. And I did test that at certain points. There is a diminishing return at a certain
Yeah.
point, but that diminishing return is a lot farther than you would think it would be because there is so much percentage that's mob on the front end.
Hmm.
Um, and the other thing I learned is if I could get, so if I worked an extra 3 to 4 hours a day and did a 13 or 14-hour day instead of a 10-hour day, I got sites done almost twice as fast as other people
Yeah.
because I had twice as much productive time.
Right.
Then what happened was I found out if I could get sites done faster, I could be home more. And I didn't have to work Saturday because I was done because I did 2 days worth of work in one day and only added 4 hours onto it.
Yeah.
And so I really ended up with this like revelation of, wow, how about we just work really, really hard, long days, and then we take more days off? And man, did that bless the crews. It also gave us more opportunities as a business
Yeah.
because when people came and offered us more opportunities, we had the ability and the time frame to say, I don't know, is it worth it to not take these days off and do these
And the
extra jobs?
choice, exactly. The choice.
Exactly. So,
The
I
thing I
mean,
noticed too is that it made your team, it made your employees, especially over in Eastern Washington, where you got so far to drive to every site. All of a sudden, your employees became more sticky.
yeah,
They appreciated it, and they looked across the other folks who were getting gas, and they were like, "Oh, well, I'm getting gas to go out to the lake and go fishing, and they're getting gas in their company truck, and this is a good day."
yeah. And there's a huge part of it too that we look at, um, that is just the ability to run your own job site. We ran a lot of, um, you're a foreman or whatever, job site foreman, lead. There's a lot of different terms that they use within the industry for the El Jefe on the job site. The man. When he has the ability to say, this is a great breaking point, we're going to stop here and we're going to start tomorrow here. He can plan his work. He can work his plan. That ability to be able to run that from the field, and it's not being pushed down from a boardroom where they don't know, yeah, sure, it looks great from the boardroom that we ought to stay here and work an extra 3 hours. What they don't know is we see a lightning storm coming and we're going to break really easily right here, and we're going to save ourselves 3 hours of headache of waiting for the lightning storm to go by. I mean, that sort of stuff is so pivotal and important when you're there on site and you have good decision making abilities and good leadership on site. That all that stuff kind of takes care of itself.
Break for pizza.
Yeah. Yeah.
Afternoon thunderstorms. Break for pizza. Got it. And those are the kind of things. And I talk about employees being sticky because I really, really want them to know how valued they are and how much we treasure the investment that they made in us. But it's just another word for loyal. What are some of the things that have engendered the loyalty that you enjoy in those long-term employees?
And even some of them aren't even long-term. Sometimes they knew they were going to be able to do this for 5 or 6 years and that they had an opportunity to go do something else. But they're people that continually come back and help us. It's for the people is why we do what we do. Whether it's for your customer, they're people too, and we can have great relationships with customers. They're looking to solve problems just like we are. Well, when you have a servant's attitude and solve the problems for the guy that you work with day in, day out, there's one of the guys I worked with, at one point we were driving down the road and he said, "Man, I wish you were better looking." And I said, "Why is that?" And he said, "Well, because I have to spend more time with you than I do my wife." and it was a joke, and it was funny, but we spent, yeah, it was. And, then we did the math and it was pretty even. And he said, "Yeah, but I'm sleeping a lot of the time I'm with her." so it doesn't count. But there's a huge aspect. If we're going to do something as often and as much as we do it, then we should do it to the level of being the highest professional and the most caring individual that we can be. If you're going to spend a lot of time doing something, you might as well do something that you enjoy doing. And they did what we do can be miserable in many, many areas. The weather, the call outs in the middle of the night. I mean, there's a million things we could pick on, but those million things could be said about any profession in the United States. The highest level doctor that there is still has to get up and go to the ER and cut someone open in the middle of the night when he'd rather be sleeping. There's nothing easy about work. That's why they pay us for it. However, the reason we do what we do is for each other and for the customer. We're serving somebody. And when we do something for someone else, there is true joy that you find in that.
Yeah. And that engenders loyalty both directions too.
Absolutely. When someone looks at you and they say, "Man, I remember when I was sick as a dog and you went and climbed for me and let me have the day off. When it was my birthday and you went a man down with your crew so I could spend time with my family. Man, I remember the time you and I suffered together. That was the most miserable." If you listen to anyone tell stories about sites that none of them are glorious. "Oh, it was the perfect bluebird day and we were all wearing t-shirts and it was really comfortable." I've never heard one of those stories.
They're awesomely terrible.
Oh, so miserable.
Yeah.
However, every story you hear is, oh man.
Thanks for tuning in today, and join us every week.
Couldn't get to the site.
Tell your
The whole
people
town
to
was
listen
out
in
for
and
wireless
subscribe
service,
to
and they were
On
calling us
Radio,
every 3
the
minutes on
voice
sat
of
phone asking
everything
us why we weren't
wireless.
done yet. Those are the stories that make it through the time.
Hang on, I have to adjust my Superman cape because we were fixing the site that couldn't be fixed in conditions that couldn't be tolerated. Well, Ryan,
Yes.
thanks for joining us on radio. We really appreciate the look back at someone who grew up wireless, who has become a legend of wireless, and who builds men. And we are so grateful for the time you carved out for us today. And as we say to everybody every week, hey, let's all choose safety today. This is Jim, and I am out.